Hi, I'm Andrew. 我说一点点中文。我的中文名字是郭小虎. Yeah, so in high school, so I'll start from the high school column.
Uh-huh.
I'm a pianist, and I'm also a composer. I was part of the National Young Arts Foundation, which is an organization that picks the top musicians in the entire country. And I'm also a presidential scholar in the arts for composing. So I'm both a pianist and composer. I've performed in the Kennedy Center, and I have been in the White House and met the First Lady. So I've also been on From the Top for piano and composing. I've been on there twice, which is an NPR National Public Radio program. For the SAT, I got a 1590. I got a perfect score in SAT Math, which is what I will be tutoring and designing the curriculum for. For my university, I go to the University of Pennsylvania. It's a wonderful school. It's an Ivy League school. I've had a great time in there. I've been if you look at the row lower from the University of Pennsylvania logo, I'm part of a fraternity, the Lambda Chi Alpha fraternity. I believe Mike has mentioned extracurricular activities. Being part of a fraternity has been a wonderful experience. I've definitely met some wonderful people from outside of the fields that I am in. I'm a math major, but I've met all kinds of people from all kinds of different fields that have provided me so many connections and opportunities. So it's been a very great experience. To the right of that, I'm actually the founder of Pencraft. It's kind of funny because I am leading the project to rebuild the University of Pennsylvania's campus in Minecraft. You know, the video game Minecraft. And that project has actually gone to the front page of The Verge, Now This, and Business Insider. So that has been a very, very exciting project. I'm also the music director of the Stimulus Children's Theater. So yeah, in terms of career, I am currently a consultant at Tech Labs. So basically, I am helping other large corporations in Europe form a virtual space for potential new recruits to explore their campus. In terms of AP tests, if you look down at the bottom right, I have taken 15 AP tests. I have gotten 5s on all of them. So yeah, that's basically all I have to say. 谢谢.
I guess maybe one of the questions that maybe some of the students and parents are thinking about is like, I want to ask you, what's the best thing about your school that you discovered after having arrived?
Yeah, okay, that's a good question. And a very important question, I think, that I think most people should know is that the biggest thing about going to a school like Columbia, Penn, New York University, anything like that is the people you meet. Really, like yeah, I mean the professors are wonderful. You might meet some great professors, but not everybody has the opportunity. You know, not everybody is blessed with having amazing professors, you know? The
Right.
most important thing about going to one of those universities are the connections you make. And here's the thing. I don't I don't mean like making friends with people just for the sake of connections,
Right.
because that's superficial
Right.
and you're not going to make, it's not real friendship. Just make friends with people, and then I guarantee you that there's a very, very high chance that those people are going to really help you out later in life.
Right. Right.
You know, especially like I'm in a fraternity, you know, and a lot of the brothers in my fraternity have provided me with wonderful opportunities
Right.
just, for the fact that I'm part of the fraternity, you know.
Right.
But even if you're not part of a fraternity, just like the people you meet,
Right.
you know, on top of the wonderful friendships that you'll make, all the fun times that you're going to have, you're also going to have a professional benefit from that as well. So
Got it.
that's what I learned after coming to Penn.
Right. Right. So there's no sisters then?
I'm in like a social fraternity, so it's not one
Right.
of those unisex fraternities.
Right. 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 You're in the
But
traditional.
we
Right.
interact with sororities as well, and
Well, of
I've met
course.
some wonderful people through those as
I'm
well.
just I'm just teasing you,
No,
man.
yeah, no, but no, like actually, like you'll meet some wonderful people through sororities as well.
Right.
So
Okay, so I'm gonna flip it around and I'm gonna ask you, what's the worst thing that you discovered after having arrived at Penn? And I'm talking about specifically about Penn because I think that
yeah,
oftentimes it's important not only to know the positives, but maybe also sometimes it's good to kind of like be a little bit grounded. And yeah,
yeah, no, that's also a very very important question to ask. Every school has their negatives.
right,
Um, the big negative I felt at Penn, um, you know how I mentioned about like forming connections and everything, right?
right,
There are a lot of people at Penn because Penn is famous for its business school, right?
of course,
Wharton, it's a lot of people, especially in Wharton. No offense to the people in Wharton, but a lot, a lot of people in that school like to make connections for the sake of connections, right?
right,
There's there's like this snobby attitude, right?
got it,
This attitude where people are all about ooh business, haha, make me money.
right,
And
right,
that was a little bit weird for me
right,
because I came from a background. I don't come from much money.
right,
I came from the background where I have to make my own money, right?
right,
So you having these people that came from families of wealth that try to make connections to gain even more wealth. It was just a little bit weird for me. So in that aspect, that is probably the worst aspect about Penn.
mm,
And I feel like a lot of other schools have a similar issue,
right,
especially
right,
the top
right,
schools, because that's kind of a thing.
right,
Yeah.
got it. Okay, so if you if you could if you could choose maybe one thing about the planning aspect, like what you did specifically in your life as a maybe as a grade 8 student or grade 9 student, um, in terms of planning for college admissions, did you do you have some specific thing that you could share about that aspect of having to think forward about how you were going to approach the admissions process?
Yeah, extracurriculars are important. They really are.
Right,
Trust me. I've One of my good friends in the Chicago. So I'm from Chicago, Illinois. I don't think I mentioned that before. I'm from
right,
Chicago.
right,
One of my good friends from Chicago actually went to University of Pennsylvania meetup with the admissions officer who's in charge of the Chicago applications. The
right,
admissions officer actually brought up my resume, like brought up my application as an example.
right,
And the thing that she liked about my application was my extracurriculars, in
right,
particular music and composition. You don't have to be a musician, right?
right,
It could be anything, as long as it doesn't relate to like getting top grades and blah blah blah. Because let's be real, you can get the best grades in the world, but it's a completely different skill set if you want to actually succeed in the real world. And college admissions officers want to see that, you
right,
know.
of course, of
So
course,
I would heavily suggest that for kids who are trying to get into these top schools, definitely focus on their extracurriculars. Yeah, yeah. I mean, test scores, get decent test scores. You don't have to be perfect, but like get decent
right,
test scores, do well in school. But having that extracurricular boost will definitely set you apart from the other people.
right, gotcha,
Because it's really a competition, you know.
got it.
So
I'm going to switch gears and I'm going to ask you about your 15 APs, okay? After having you just said what you said, I'm going to
yeah.
ask you about doing 15 APs. So
Okay.
can you share?
Can I list them?
Yeah, no. I want you to just share your top tip, your number one tip for time management.
Oh,
Like
geez.
the number one, like if you could only say one thing about advice for time management, what would it be?
Okay. Well, first of all, do you mind if I list out the APs that I took?
No.
Okay. So I'll just list it out as calculus BC, US history, world history, language, literature, statistics, music theory, physics mechanics, physics electromagnetics, computer science, chemistry, biology, macroeconomics, microeconomics, and
Right,
psychology. So the biggest thing, okay, so I'm kind of a weird case because I was homeschooled in high
right,
school at least.
right,
I don't expect any high schooler to take 15 APs because just time, you know? Because
right,
the reason why I took 15 APs, the only reason, and the only other people that I know that take as many APs that I do are also homeschooled because I needed to prove that I learned what I learned, you know?
right.
Because
Got it.
in my application, I could just say, haha, I learned this stuff.
Right,
It could be just made up, right? So I had to take
right.
those APs as proof. But
Oh, okay, okay.
so because I was homeschooled, I feel like my advice won't exactly apply to a lot of people,
Uh-huh.
you know, with time management. But I mean, all I can say is just just study hard. Trust me, you're gonna have fun in college. So in high school, just study hard. That's really all. That's really all I should say, especially since
Okay,
I'm homeschooled, because I don't want to give advice to non-homeschooled people for that
got
very reason.
got it. Makes
So
sense.
yeah.
Okay, why did you choose the SAT over the ACT?
Oh,
I'm
it's
curious. I'm
there's no
curious.
particular reason. It's just like I it was almost a random choice, you know. There was
Okay,
the
so you
SAT
didn't
and the
really.
ACT, and also the writing section. I don't know if the ACT has changed, but the ACT, the writing section seems a little bit more subjective, right? While the SAT
Ah,
was more of an analytical style, right? They give you
okay,
a passage, and then you have to analyze the passage,
right,
right? And
right.
I preferred that. That's literally the only reason. But yeah, that's why I took the SAT over the ACT, and also because I took a lot of SAT subject tests.
Oh,
I
you
got
took a lot of
800.
SAT tests. Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. SAT subject tests, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. So again, the maybe the only thing that you were really thinking about when it came to making a decision was just like you felt that somehow the criteria for the SAT writing section was just a little bit more objective. It
Yeah.
didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Cause I don't know, like, you know, so the SAT changed, right? Back in the day, there was the 2400 system, right?
yeah, yeah,
And then it changed to the 1600 system. Back
yeah.
in the 2400 system, a lot of that was similar to the ACT, right?
Mm,
You had to kind of write your own thing using past
yeah,
experiences and stuff. And I've had experience. I know a lot of people that took the writing test in the SAT, right?
yeah.
And they kind of just made things up on the fly that would
Right.
fit the prompt of the
Right.
SAT. And I just felt a little bit awkward about that. So I
Right.
preferred a more objective system.
Right. Got it.
But that's just me. Maybe it's just because I'm bad at making things up and
Right.
things like that.
Gotcha.
But yeah,
Okay.
that's
Thanks,
just my
Andrew.
opinion. Yeah.
Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate it.
No worries. No worries.
Thanks, man. All
My name is Ricky. I'm currently a senior in Columbia University studying physics and computer science mathematics. I'm originally from Boston, but I grew up most of my life in Shanghai, China, and that's also where I went to high school at Shanghai 中学国际部. I think I'm going to stick to English because I'm a little more comfortable in English, but if it's necessary for me to answer some of these questions in Chinese, I'll try. Um, so while I was in high school, so it's actually quite interesting. I was very heavily involved mostly in politics and social activism. I'm extracurriculars. I think I very much had like dual passions in the sciences and in the humanities. So I was student body president for 2 years at my high school. I was involved in debate and Model UN, and I also started a nonprofit project to volunteer at community centers for special education and raise awareness about mental and intellectual disabilities in China. And, and in terms of my standardized testing, I got a 35 on the ACT and I got 800s on 3 of the SAT2s in math, physics, and literature. And I also did the IB diploma program in which I got a 45 out of 45. And I wrote my, wrote my extended essay on postmodernism and Thomas Pynchon, which is, again, a very good book, The Crime of Lot 49. Highly recommend reading it. So moving into university, I'm currently studying a double major in physics and the joint major in computer science and mathematics. And, I guess I didn't put it on here, but Similarly to Andrew, I'm also involved in a fraternity. I'm part of Lambda Phi Epsilon, which is an Asian interest fraternity, but I don't know, maybe you're seeing a trend here in Greek life. I'm also heavily involved with Columbia's Chinese Students Club, whose logo is down here. And, it's a very long-standing tradition of a club that I joined because I heard that Hu Shi was one of the first members and founding members of this club. So career-wise, I focus most of my college time career-wise in research in physics specifically. So I've worked in Professor Dmitry Basov's Basov Infrared Laboratory for the past about 2 years, working as a research assistant in condensed matter physics. And I'm also heavily interested in AI, machine learning, and the applications of AI to our future, which is why I interned at a company named WorkPal, which is a startup dedicated to using AI to improve mental and physical well-being in the workplace for young professionals.
I'm going to ask you to tell me the thing about your school that you learned after arriving that was really a great surprise to you.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, one of the biggest things that was surprising was how international it was and how, diverse it was. Not just like, and I guess, not just in a superficial way of diversity, but in terms of people actually coming from extremely different backgrounds and having very different just, perspectives on life.
Right.
I felt that, because I was an international student coming in to New York City. So at first I felt like I could be, intimidated, or maybe, it would be kind of weird. I wouldn't
Right.
how life goes here. So I think that finding that community was very comforting for me.
Okay, so that was the best thing about the school, right? That you were kind of that you didn't really realize before.
Yeah, because I think that there were a lot of things, that look great on paper, and then you find out they're not that great, or something of the sort, or sound really
Right.
good in theory, but then you actually take the class and you're like, wow, I just don't want to do this, right?
Right.
So I think that something that really, I guess for me, was very shocking was that I think it was one of the first times I had a truly productive discussion class,
Right.
which I think that very often, in high school, at least my experience has been that discussion classes are, very, very long and kind of boring because people just bounce the same ideas off each other.
Right.
You like the same 2 or 3 people speaking in class. And
Right.
ultimately, there's no real conflict, there's no real, diversity of perspectives. But I think that, for instance, in one of my classes, that was a design class for engineering design. And then one of the students in my class was a veteran. He was a Navy veteran from
Right.
the US Navy, and he brought in perspective of his experience with design, which was that while he was being deployed, he had to work certain on-the-spot solutions or consider the patients because he was a medic.
Right.
And I thought that was an extremely interesting perspective that I would not have thought of otherwise.
Got it. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing to you. I'm going to ask you, what's the worst that, so what's the one thing that you didn't expect that really sucks?
Um, I think that, similar to what Andrew was saying, like, while in college, you'll meet a lot of people who are truly brilliant, who are truly, the best of the best. I think very often these people with extreme intelligence are also, a bit extreme on the personality side. So
Right.
you definitely, you run into some characters, some, very crazy people. Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes that's a bad thing. In
Right.
my case, there was a student in my class, in my physics classes, who was I don't know if you guys have heard of him, but he was on the cover of the New York Times for being an extremely outspoken white supremacist and a self-proclaimed physics genius who has
Right.
figured out all of physics,
Right.
and somehow he became very Twitter famous with the alternative right, and and it was just a very bizarre experience interacting with him on a daily basis.
Right. Right. Well, actually, you almost want to put that under the category of a good thing, right?
Almost, in a way, you could look at it that way.
In a way, right? Yeah. So, okay. All right. So I'm going to ask you a kind of an academic question. So, you chose IB.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to ask you, why IB
Mm,
as a program?
yeah. I mean, I think that, so I would say that maybe 70% of the reason is just because that was what my school mainly offered. So like my high school was very much skewed towards the IB program over the AP program, uh,
Mhm.
just as a result of being in China, being an international school, things like that.
Mm.
I also think though, like for me, IB was great because I think what they do not as well as the AP subjects, because I've also taken a few of the AP tests on my own. I think that, sometimes the material is not as in depth in a single subject. But I think what you get in return is that, the whole curriculum sort of ties together very naturally. And you
Mm.
have ideas that, or at least, teaching philosophy
Mm.
that has the same ideas pop up in different subjects in different forms.
Mm.
For me, I really enjoyed the theory of knowledge portion of the IB program, which
Mhm.
focuses on sort of an introduction to epistemology. It's,
Mhm.
this basically understanding the question, how do we know what we know? And, what is the basis upon which we build our knowledge?
Right. So in a sense, then for you, the IB program really began because it was practical for you to do, because it was, a core part of what the school was, what was doing in the first place, right? But the other part, I think you're trying to say is that the IB program, as opposed to AP, is something in which the not only the pedagogy, meaning the style of teaching that you are exposed to, right? But also the main ideas which thematically pop up and tie together in a way that maybe for those people who are more prone to kind of thinking on a big scale, like big picture, it's valuable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right. Got it. Okay, so you're probably expecting this question, so this one probably is not going to be much of a surprise, but can you share with us your journey from Shanghai to studying at Columbia? And what I mean by that is, let's face it, I mean, that's a journey. Like that's not, do you know what I mean? Like that's a real journey. So can you yeah, just share that experience with us.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was born in the U.S., just in Lowell, Massachusetts, which is a place
Mhm.
right outside Boston. And then when I was about 3 years old, my entire family moved back to China because my father's a startup entrepreneur.
Right.
So I've lived since then in China. And in a way, it's like, I think it's very interesting and sort of being like, I guess, what's the word for it? Like a middle child almost, like between cultures, you
Right.
know? You're not like as, cool as like the older brother, and you're
Right.
not as, doted upon as the younger brother, you
Right.
know? So it's this very bizarre, I think, for me, especially growing up, I just constructed this sense of identity of being an American.
Hmm.
Um, and then after I came here, that again challenged, what does it mean to be an American? What does it mean to be Chinese? And which
Right.
one? So I think that, but there's also, I guess, a personal reason for it, which is that, my parents were students, 留学生, I don't forgot the English term for that, but they were 留学生 in New York City in
Hmm.
the 90s, before they had me, and they were very poor students. They didn't have much money. They went to city college, and they went to school full time, and they also worked full time at night. And
Hmm.
so I think coming to school in New York specifically was always been like, a personal dream of mine, because this was, where my parents had, put in their labor and their hard work.
Right. Interesting. Okay, so in a sense, it was like full circle, like trying to come join the circle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. Okay, so I want to ask you one last thing. So, what didn't I ask you that I should have asked you?
Um, hmm. Hmm.
If
That's a really,
something doesn't come to mind, how about sharing something that you think parents should know that maybe they don't?
yeah. I think that, at least, in my experience growing up in China, I think that something that strikes me as a little bit of a tragedy is that I think very often, parents want the best for their kids, right?
Right.
They want to do everything in their power to, put their kids in a position where they can succeed.
Right.
But there are also times when, that sort of that sort of like, I don't want to say crush, but because that's a strong word, but that sort of mutes, the child's personal ambitions. And I think that as a result, um, especially when you come into university, you meet a lot of people who come here and are brilliant, extremely talented, but don't know what they want out of life and don't know what they want to do, or even something as simple as choosing your major. They
Right.
don't know what they truly desire out of life. And I
Mm,
think that because of that, your motivation becomes very external. And this is something I
mm,
notice in myself too, that, a lot of my motivation very often just comes from the people around me or the
mm,
environment that I'm in. And
right.
obviously, preferably, I would wish that my motivation is internal, that I'm in tune with what I want out of life. And for that reason, I'm motivated to do that. So I think that maybe that's something that, is sort of a pitfall that's very easy to fall into.
Right. Gotcha. Okay. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
So my name is Harry Feldman. My academic journey was a little bit unconventional, so I'll try to explain. So I went to the Science and Engineering Magnet for the first 2 years of my high school. It's one of the top high schools in the country. While I was there, we didn't have a yearbook when I got there, and so I started the yearbook and got that off the ground and was head of yearbook for 2 years. I was also class president while I was there. And I completed 7 APs in my 2 years there. I got 5 5s and 2 4s. And then after the Science and Engineering Magnet, I moved on to an early college program called the Advanced Academy of Georgia, where similar to dual enrollment, you take college classes to finish your high school credits, but you also live on campus. So while I was there, I took my my SAT, and I got an 800 in math, 780 in writing, 780 in reading, and a 700 in writing. And during the summers there, and during my last summer at SEM, I did a summer semester at Yale, a summer semester at Georgetown, and then from there, I went on to apply to Georgia Tech and got in. And at Georgia Tech, I joined a fraternity. I'm in Theta Chi, Alpha Nu chapter, and I also became a chair of the largest political organization at Georgia Tech. And since my tenure, we have grown 150%, or 50% of the previous numbers was added on to our total recruitment. And then that moves on to my work experience. So I'll start with the Boys and Girls Club of America. During high school, I received the Presidential Service Award for over 200 hours a year of service. And I completed almost all of that service at the Boys and Girls Club, tutoring underprivileged students in mathematics. Then I also, one of the summers that I wasn't doing early college, I went to Thailand to backpack, and I spent 3 months working at the DEPDC. I can't actually remember what the acronym stands for. It's a very long acronym, but basically, I was a mathematics teacher. The teaching standards are slightly lower for Thailand, and so I was able to go and be a mathematics teacher for 3 months. Then there was also the CDC, the Center for Disease Control. I spent a little bit over a year working on a project there, where I was trying to create a machine learning algorithm to detect HIV outbreaks before they happen. So we can get, proactive help to those areas before the outbreaks happen. Then after that, I worked at Hearst. I was mainly working in web development at Hearst, and I worked on the websites for various Hearst subsidiaries. The main one was Car and Driver, Car and Driver magazine. I did that website. There were 2 other people helping me, but most of that website, was worked on by me. And then finally, that brings me to Allo Talk. Over the last summer, I went to Israel and lived in Tel Aviv for 3 months and worked at Allotalk. Allotalk is a social network for the elderly. And I was working on a machine learning algorithm to detect people's age based on their voice to keep scammers off the app.
So what was it that blew you away about when you first got to school? What was the thing that you didn't expect that you found out only after having arrived at university that was a real positive?
Well, I would definitely say that I agree with Andrew in that the community at the school is very important. I found, my best memories through my fraternity, through my, political organizing. And I'm also heavily involved in the skateboarding club and the rock climbing club. Having those outlets outside of school, I think, is critically important. Without those outlets, I don't think I'd make it through. So yeah, I think you definitely need to allow your child the freedom to explore the campus and see what there is to offer that's non-academic.
Right. Okay, so I'm gonna go the same direction with you I did with everyone else. So that was what's great. But what about what really sucks at school?
Well, right now is a pretty tough time for the Georgia Tech community. We're experiencing the coronavirus outbreak like everyone else.
Right.
Here it's really bad. We've had peaks of 39 students a day, 68 students a day, and another
Right.
peak was over 100 students a day were infected with the virus.
Wow.
So I would not say that we're handling it well. And there's been a lot that's come out in terms of information with the school making decisions based on finances and not necessarily based on student health. So I would say that's a huge negative of the school.
Right. So you're saying that in some sense, like, universities are not immune to being mercenary, just like any other large institution or business, right?
Yeah, and they're definitely not immune from putting profits over what they should be doing.
Exactly. Yeah. Unfortunate but true, right? Huh?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have an academic question to ask. So before we get into talking about your volunteer and other stuff that I want to talk about later, I want to just briefly ask you, did you have a strategy for choosing AP subjects? Like, did you did you come into the whole thing thinking, oh, I'm just going to pick whatever, or did you really have a process of making those decisions?
I mean, my process was just, do I find this subject interesting? The way to get me to do the work is for me to be interested in the work. So,
Right.
It wouldn't have worked well if I was forced into, let's say like the music theory AP course. Like I've actually since then learned a lot about music and gotten really into it. But like back at that time, if I was forced into an AP like that, it would have been difficult for me to keep up with the work because I wouldn't enjoy myself.
Right. Right. So I guess maybe just to summarize, then you're saying that, hey, look, don't try and be quote unquote practical about what you're doing or strategic. What you're saying is just try to take something that's intellectually interesting to you.
Yeah, when it comes to things like SAT testing, for example, you would want to implement a little bit more strategy in how to go about it. But for things that you're going to have to be doing every day of your life, like taking a class or picking a job, I think that enjoying it is key.
Right. Gotcha. Okay. So can you speak to your volunteer experience? Because we have students that are attending this seminar, right? And I think it might be useful for you to kind of speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So at the Boys and Girls Club in Dallas, Texas, I spent over 200 hours a year tutoring. I got most of the hours through tutoring, and it was just such a rewarding experience. I got to work with underprivileged students from age 6 to 18, and it was just so rewarding seeing them excel and find things that actually interest them. It's just such a rewarding experience. And then at the DPDC in Thailand, I was working as a teacher, and it was very emotional. These were students that were saved from the sex trade, so they really had no real options in life. This school gave them a basic education. I would be teaching very basic math concepts, how to count money, how to count time, stuff like that, things that they're going to be using in their day-to-day life. And again, with the DPDC, it was just so rewarding seeing them learn, and they also loved me there. I was like a celebrity, being, if you're a white person that goes to Southeast Asia, you're basically like going to be like a celebrity. So they were all obsessed with me.
Okay, well, I mean, that's good to know. I mean, for volunteer experience, I mean, that sounds pretty interesting, actually. Not just, I mean, emotionally, like you said, but like there's a kind of there's another aspect to it, I guess. Like you said, I mean, it's funny how, in a way, right, there are some advantages to being like a colonial a colonial member, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's kind of weird irony.
Yeah, like one of my favorite parts about it was just them seeing what I had done, and seeing that there is more in life that they can do. I think that hopefully I inspired them to some degree, and hopefully that'll carry some of them further than they would have gone otherwise.
And that volunteer experience, you feel like everyone else has sort of said so far in terms of volunteering and their extracurriculars, did you feel that had an important impact on the admissions process for you, like in terms of getting an offer?
Definitely. I think that for me, the main things that set me apart were my extracurriculars, being class president, being running the yearbook, and other extracurriculars like volunteer work. I had done a few smaller internships back then that gave me a leg up on the competition, and in addition, the early college program I did, that definitely set me apart as well.
So I want to talk a little bit about that idea about internships and why they're important. So let's talk. I just want to talk a little bit, or have you talk, I mean, about what is it about internships in general that are so important as an experience for students?
Well, what you do at an internship is generally going to be hopefully going to be what you do in your profession. So if you can do it at the internship, it very clearly shows that you can do it in a way that classes don't, and extracurriculars don't, and testing doesn't.
Right.
Yeah, so I would say they're very critical. Also, they're critical in learning what you like. There was one internship that I did that I didn't enjoy it, and it was in the medical field, and I actually ended up changing directions completely after that, and deciding to not pursue medicine, and instead pursue mathematics.
Right. So what you're saying is that it can be rewarding in a negative sense. Well, not really negative, but just in the sense that you can also really find out in a practical sense, like what you really are not going to be doing with your life.
Right. Definitely.
Right. Got it. Okay. So did I ask you anything or I should say maybe the other way around, like, so did I leave something out that, like, should I have asked you about?
Not a ton I can think of off the top of my head. If you wanted to ask about, like, what are like the most important things in getting into these schools. I think you asked some of the other tutors that. I think that for me personally, I think that I mostly agree with Andrew in that you have to like testing is important, and you should practice at a certain test and get a good score in it, and you should care about your grades. But I would say that there are thousands of people applying from all over the country and the world that have probably better grades than you and probably better SAT scores than you. So
Right.
the thing that is going to set you apart is going to be the things you do outside of school.
Gotcha.
Thank you, Harry.
Thanks.
Hi, everybody. Hope you're having a good afternoon. My name is Danny Cigale. I'm currently a sophomore at New York University. And yeah, I'll just give you a brief introduction. So I was born and raised in the state of New York, and I now live in the city of New York. But I actually have been to two public high schools in my high school career. First of which was in the suburbs of New York City, and the second of which was in Massachusetts. But the main point in my high school column here is my involvement with the NSDA, or the National Speech and Debate Association. So throughout my 4 years of high school, I've been super passionate about speech and debate. I mostly was interested in like the aspect of the public speaking and the persuasion, but also I think it's just like super interesting and super helpful for me as a student and me as a person to develop those skills of critical and analytical thinking, as well as research and foreign policy, current events, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I've done high school throughout my 2 years at Byram Hills and my 2 years at Lincoln Sudbury Regional High School, as you see up here. And yeah, so at the end of my high school career and my senior year, we did particularly well in the style of debate which I did, which was called public forum debate. And basically, there's two tournaments at the end of the year. There's the Tournament of Champions, and there's the NSDA National Speech and Debate Tournament. And so me and my partner, we qualified to those tournaments each and every year. But my senior year, we were the runner-up at the Tournament of Champions, and we were second to none in the NSDA tournament a few months later. So yeah, I took a lot from debate in terms of how I'm thinking and how I'm approaching arguments in general in my daily life. But one thing that it particularly made me interested in was in terms of psychology and metacognition. And what I mean by that is when I'm debating, I'm trying to persuade a given judge. So it's my job to think about how they're perceiving me and think about how they're thinking. So that has really made me interested in general types of mostly social psychology, which is what I've been studying in college. So before I get onto that, I'll talk about some academic stuff. So yeah, I got 1470 on the SAT and took 4 SAT 2s and got 800s on all of them. And in terms of my APs, I have not taken 15, but I've taken 4 total and passed all of them, 4s and 5s. So that was enough to get me into the NYU school, which is called the Gallatin School of Individualized Study. So, which is a very small school within NYU. It's only about 150 to 200 students. And the idea here is that no one really has a major or like a plan. Everyone, it's all about interdisciplinary study. So you take things that you're interested in, you find the intersections between those subjects, and then you form your own concentration based on a few different things. So currently, for example, I'm studying psychology, social psychology, and mixed with sociology and mixed with marketing, which I think has been super interesting so far. I'm looking forward to studying over my next few years. And to apply that more specifically, during my time at NYU, I've started to work in the SPAM lab led by Emily Balchetis, which stands for the Social Perception, Action, and Motivation Lab. So as a research assistant there, I've been doing a lot of I've been running a lot of experiments and studies on people, as well as recruiting people for studies, that kind of stuff, at whatever a research assistant is told to do. And yeah, that kind of application has just been super interesting to me in terms of the social aspect of psychology and psychology studies. And I'm talking about this a lot because I primarily at ACE Education will be doing psychology tutoring for students, as well as debate tutoring / coaching when necessary. So other than that, what I've been doing since I got out of high school in terms of making money is, as you can see based on this really funny shirt, is that I've been doing debate coaching. So one of the one of the positive aspects from a overwhelmingly negative time right now is that debate coaching has become like super accessible to a lot of different people. So I've been doing a lot of debate coaching online for less money than usual, and like whatever hours people want, whatever, which has become not only lucrative for me, but also, good for all my students. So that's mostly what I've been doing. And like I said, I'll be doing debate tutoring as well as psychology tutoring, and maybe some writing tutoring too. So yeah, thank you.
When you first got to school, what was the thing that kind of really stood out to you that you didn't expect?
Yeah, so for those who don't remember, I go to New York University, Lower Manhattan. So I think that I think it's two main things: one academic and one kind of in general. And academic is when I'm talking about school, what I think about it is like the specific school that I'm in, which is, like I said, is this small individualized study school. And I think that there are schools like this, or at least programs like this in many different colleges, not only NYU. And I think that things like this are really, really great, because like my freshman year, I had 3 or 4 classes that were like one professor 9 students, or one professor 12 students, something like that. Like classes that, like, I was in like one of the best universities in the country with these great professors, and I was in classes that were smaller than the classes I was in high school, which is just like great one-on-one interaction with these not only great professors, but also, like everyone else has said, really great students. So I think that like the individualized nature of the attention that I've been getting at NYU has been really remarkable. But even past that, I think one thing that no one has mentioned so far that can go underestimated is the location and the culture of the university and the area around the university. So like I said, as an NYU student, I'm pretty much living what they say is in and of the city, where we don't really have like a campus or borders of what is NYU and what is not NYU. You're really living in the city itself. And I think that even not only has this opened me up to like just a lot of really great cultural opportunities, but just actual opportunities of, there's just so much going on around me in terms of business and in terms of art and in terms of whatever I want, that there's really avenue to explore for whatever interest you have. Like for me, that has manifested in me coaching public high schools in New York. Like the one I coach primarily is Stuyvesant High School in the Lower East Side, or right. Lower West Side, sorry. But yeah, that could mean anything for anyone else. So I think that the location and the culture of the area around the university has also really enhanced my university experience so far, at least.
Right. Okay. So you know what's coming now, right? I'm going to ask you what's terrible. What was the thing, or what is the thing that is sort of that you'd like to share about NYU that really set you back?
Yeah. So what I would say is the kind of, double-edged sword of the individualized nature of NYU. And while I was talking about like small classes, that kind of stuff, that is somewhat particular to the school that I'm in. But overall, I think New York University does have like a pretty individualized culture, in that you don't really see a lot of people like going to like great big sporting events or like pep rallies and stuff like that. It's not really, everyone's kind of doing their own thing, which I think is good or bad on an individual basis. And right. For me, at least, I think what it meant for me, at least in like the beginning of my freshman year, was that it became, it's easy to wind up in a situation where you're only really like interacting with people and interacting with clubs and stuff like that if you're choosing to do so. Whereas in other schools, it's like maybe some things are set up for you. At a college like NYU, which is much more individual, it's like you need to go out and try to meet people and go out and try to join clubs and stuff like that. Nothing is really done for you, which in my experience, at least so far, was presented a struggle at the beginning of my academic experience, but has made, at least for me, in the long term, has made that even better, because now I feel like I'm just a young person living in New York with friends and who's just in the city. Whereas in the beginning, it felt like I was just a person alone in the city. Now it feels like I'm a person who is on my own in the city with the resources that I want to have, which is a slight difference, but a big
Right.
difference too.
Yeah, NYU is sort of really got its own thing going on, doesn't it? I've been to campus many times doing tours and stuff with students of mine, and I'm always struck by the different ambience, at NYU compared to a lot of the other top schools. It's very different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to ask you. I want to talk, or I want you to talk a little bit about, from the perspective of a student that's in on this seminar, why study debate, or why participate in debate as an extracurricular, looking at it from a college admissions perspective. Yeah, if you could speak to that, I think that might actually help some of the students decide whether or not it's for them.
Yeah, so that's a great question, of course. I think there are a lot of good answers to that question.
Mm-hmm.
The first, which might seem a little obvious, is that, like everyone has said so far, is that things look good on a resume. So debate is one of the things that people are looking for as an extracurricular. So obviously that is not a reason to do it, but it is a benefit of doing so. But I think it goes a lot deeper than that. So the way that I would phrase it is like, when you're learning how to get good at debate throughout your 4 years of high school, you're not really learning like a specific thing. You're more so learning like a way of thinking about everything. Like where if you study like robotics or something, I'm sure that has its own rewarding whatever impacts, but you're more so just like learning how to code and how to do everything you need to do with robotics. But when I'm learning how to do well on a high level of national debate, learning is how to think on my feet, because super tight time restrictions where I need to think of arguments and responses to arguments that I've never heard of before. I need to think really critically about whether an argument makes sense and what are the steps in the argument. And that's another layer of it, is that the main thing that I've learned is how to like very clearly break down what makes an argument make sense. And so what that has meant to me is I've seen it like the way it's talked about in debate a lot is in terms of like a link chain, like X leads to Y when all the way down, and just thinking about it very like in a delineated fashion of this leads to this, which leads to this, which leads to this. And so the other layer of this, what I was trying to get to, is that even if it's not even like past the resume level, I think that the reason why I reason why I'm a good writer to this day is because I've gotten good because of debate at saying, here's my argument, here's why this argument is true, X, Y, Z, and presenting it very clearly as like, here's what I'm trying to prove to you, here's why I'm proving or how I'm proving it to you, and here's why it matters, is basically the format of every argument. Right. And has led me to write pretty good academic essays, but it's also like this similar idea to a personal essay on the Common App is, here's the argument is like, I believe I should be in your college, whatever. Here's why, and here's why it matters if you let me in. It's basically the same format. And if you learn how to like think of those different tools as like aspects of the argument, you're really learning like a whole logical level of thinking as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And even beyond that, I've also, debate has a great community, a great circuit across America, at least. But I know a lot of high school students in British Columbia also come down to American tournaments, especially now that they're online. And I've met a lot of my best friends through debate, at debate camps, online or not online, at debate tournaments, online or not online.
Right. Yeah. So, other than a practical like level, then, from just a personal point of view, then um, friendships are important, obviously. And you're saying that, this has been an extracurricular that's kind of like gotten you a lot of friendships. And I think, let's face it, I mean, in the world we live in, that's important, right? I mean, I know that doesn't sound practical, but it's real nonetheless. So,
Yeah.
okay, I was really curious to hear a little bit more about, like, why would someone choose independent studies? I think that's essentially a faculty or at least a department at Gallatin, right? Or is Gallatin itself an independent studies faculty?
Yeah, Gallatin is a school within NYU, just like Stern is, or
Yeah,
arts and sciences, whatever.
right,
The title is a school of individualized study. So the whole
right,
thing is the professors within Gallatin teach have their expertise in anything across across any, like, they the actual content is not limited at all. But all the professors within Gallatin are uh, look at what they're studying in an interdisciplinary sense. So they're studying, instead of just studying like American history in the 60s, they're studying American history in the 60s through music. Or instead of studying, I took a class about documentary last semester, but instead of just studying like here's a history of documentary, it was here's a history of documentary and how this like shows the historical authenticity of marginalized groups and stuff like that. So yeah, I
So
think
why would, okay, but so why, so why would, like, what would be the benefit
that,
of someone who's in, let's say, high school now, who's thinking forward to their major at university? What would be the benefit to that person to consider independent directed studies rather than a traditional approach?
yeah, it's a good question. I think that um, it's very much so on an individual basis. Like, I don't think it necessarily would be a benefit to everyone, and
Hmm.
that some people as students thrive in a structure where they say that you need to take these amount of this kind of class and this amount of a different kind of class, and then you get credits for all of it and adds up and everything's good. I personally, I I think that part of the academic experience that I'm enjoying is the shaping of my academic experience. Like,
Hmm.
I'm not just thinking about like what kind of math class I'm taking or anything like that. I'm also thinking about like how can I pick, because the one of the best parts of Gallatin, in my opinion, is that you are able to take classes in across the whole university in Stern
Hmm.
or Fish or anything. So you're
Right.
really you really have the ability to form your own academic path, which uh, especially if which it allows you to like study things that you might not be able to study if you're stuck to a core curriculum. The
Right.
choices may be somewhat limited. Whereas if you're forming your own concentration, you really can uh, focus on what you're interested in, and instead of focusing on like what colleges think that you should know. Um,
Mm.
yeah, I think that I would not recommend it for everyone, and it definitely has like another added level of responsibility because, like me as a Gallatin student, I have to be paying attention semester after semester about like how these classes that I'm choosing to take add into this overall like image of what I want my concentration to be.
Right.
So it's an added level of responsibility for sure, but uh, I think that responsibility is kind of like it kind of forces you to think about what you're really interested in because you're forcing yourself to think about like because you're really forcing yourself to just create your own path instead of going on a path that already exists.
Right. So you have to really take ownership, over everything that you're doing in some sense. Like in some sense, you really have to be an adult about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. Okay. Well, thanks, Danny. Appreciate it. That was interesting.